Welcome back, everyone. We're about to take a deep dive into something that's seriously changing how we think about success. Altered states of consciousness and how they connect to high performance and innovation. We'll be looking at two books today, Stealing Fire, which focuses on how some seriously high-achieving groups are using these states, and then Entheo Guide, which gives us like a practical guide to navigating those non-ordinary experiences, ready to uncover how people and organizations are using these states for breakthroughs.
It's really fascinating because, we often treat these areas like consciousness, performance, and innovation as totally separate things. But research is showing they're actually coming together in ways that could completely reshape how we live and work.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so before we go any further, let's define what we even mean by ecstasis. Stealing Fire uses it as kind of a broad term for those altered states where you feel a sense of selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, and richness. What's the big deal about these states anyway?
Well, the key is that these states aren't just some mystical idea. They're rooted in the structure of our brains. And they can be accessed in lots of different ways. Stealing Fire actually highlights 4 major forces that are driving the rise of these states: psychology, neurobiology, pharmacology, and technology. Okay,
so these states are rooted in science and becoming more accessible. But where does performance come in?
Stealing Fire makes this surprising connection. Both Navy SEALs, known for their elite military performance, and Google, the tech giant, both actively use ecstatic experiences for better teamwork and results. It seems kind of counterintuitive using something that sounds so out there.
It might seem that way on the surface, but think about it. When teams enter a state of group flow, their focus sharpens, they act in sync, and they feel a sense of shared purpose. It's almost like they flip a switch to a collective mindset, where the team becomes greater than the sum of its parts. Totally. Stealing Fire even mentions that Google's early CEO selection process was actually inspired by the SEALs' intense training. Potential CEOs were put through these tough challenges, not necessarily to test their physical limits, but more to see if they could stay calm and connected to the team under pressure.
Exactly. And that really shows how these principles of ecstatic experience can be used in all sorts of unexpected places. It drives home the point that these states aren't just for spiritual gurus or adrenaline junkies. They're tools for anyone who wants to collaborate better, be more innovative, or reach peak performance. And the cool thing is, you don't need SEAL training to tap into this.
For sure. And this is where it gets really interesting for you, the listener. Stealing Fire reveals what they call an altered states economy. A whopping $4 trillion spent every single year on activities that get us out of our heads.
Think meditation, yoga, even things like video games and immersive entertainment. People are clearly searching for ways to shift their consciousness and tap into these states.
So instead of you having to, dig through tons of research on this trend, this deep dive is giving you the inside scoop. Let's get into how all of this actually works in the brain. Stealing Fire talks about the brain's ecstatic circuitry. What exactly is going on in there?
Essentially, there are specific chemicals and areas in your brain that are involved in creating these altered states. One of the key players is dopamine, a neurotransmitter that's linked to pleasure and reward. And the amygdala, which processes emotions, also gets highly activated.
Okay, so specific brain chemicals and regions are lighting up. Interesting. Entheo Guide actually takes this even further. They share a story about someone seeing layers of glass during a guided psychedelic experience. It's a metaphor suggesting that these states can reveal hidden dimensions of ourselves and the world.
It's pretty amazing to consider that potential. But we also have to remember that there can be risks. Think of John Lilly's float tank experiments, where people pushed the boundaries too far and had some negative consequences.
Right. It's important to remember that. Responsible exploration is key here. But let's not forget one of the most exciting things about these states. They can help unlock creativity and solve complex problems.
Oh, for sure. Both books have so many examples of people using non-ordinary states to access insights that they just couldn't reach in their everyday consciousness. It's like tapping into a whole new level of creative thinking and intuition.
Yeah, there's this story in Entheo Guide about an architect who was totally stuck on this complex design. He goes into an altered state and boom, the entire solution just pops into his head, clear as day.
It really highlights how these states could change the game for problem solving. Imagine being able to access that level of clarity whenever you needed to. And it's not just for creative fields either. Think about the potential for scientific breakthroughs, business strategy, even personal challenges you're facing.
Absolutely. It really seems like these states are becoming more accessible to everyone, don't you think? Almost like they're being democratized.
Absolutely. Yeah. Stealing Fire talks about how new technologies, scientific discoveries, and cultural shifts are making these states more available than ever before. Think 3D printed pharmaceuticals, synthetic biology. It's wild.
Wait, 3D printed pharmaceuticals? Are we talking about printing our own medication at home?
It's a possibility that Stealing Fire explores, and it's pretty mind-blowing. And with synthetic biology, we're talking about engineering organisms to create specific compounds, including ones that can alter consciousness. It makes you wonder, will we be able to download specific experiences in the future?
That raises so many questions, especially ethical ones, which brings us to the important issue of navigating the risks of this emerging landscape.
We can't ignore the potential downsides. We need to ask ourselves, how do we benefit from the power of these states without falling prey to the dangers?
Exactly. There's the risk of addiction, manipulation, and even losing yourself in these states. Stealing Fire uses examples like Dean Potter's wingsuit fatality and Kristen Ulmer's near-death ski experiences to remind us to respect the power of these states and approach them carefully.
It's a tightrope walk. We have to encourage responsible exploration while acknowledging the potential for harm. Personal awareness and understanding the risks are so important. But we also can't let fear stop us from innovating and discovering.
Okay, so let's take a minute and recap what we've covered. We've established that these ecstatic experiences, which bring feelings of selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, and richness, aren't just airy-fairy concepts. They actually deeply impact individual and group performance.
Right, and we've looked at how both the Navy SEALs and Google have used these states to get incredible results, and how this whole altered states economy shows how many people are seeking these experiences.
Yeah, and we've explored the science behind it all, the ecstatic circuitry in the brain, highlighting both the potential and the risks. And we've seen how powerful these states can be for boosting creativity and problem solving, with examples from both Stealing Fire and EntheoGuide.
And we've touched upon how these states are becoming more accessible thanks to advancements in technology, science, and culture.
But we also recognize the importance of navigating the risks that come with this increased access. We have to emphasize responsible exploration and making smart choices.
Before we move on, what are your thoughts so far? What's piqued your curiosity about all this?
You know, what I find fascinating is how this desire for ecstasy is like a common thread throughout human history, from ancient rituals to modern technology. We've always looked for ways to go beyond our ordinary experiences.
It's like we have this innate drive to break free from the mundane and connect to something bigger than ourselves. What's so interesting is how that drive is showing up in the modern world, not just in individual pursuits, but in how we organize ourselves as a society.
Exactly. Think about the evolution of Burning Man. It started as this small gathering on a beach, and it exploded into this massive cultural phenomenon. It's a powerful example of people using these states to build community, spark creativity, and explore new ways of being. And it's not just Burning Man. Stealing Fire highlights a whole network of organizations and communities that are using these states to drive innovation and positive change. Groups like Summit Series, which blends adventure, personal growth, and social impact. And Mai Tai Global, which uses action sports like kiteboarding to foster entrepreneurial collaboration.
It's a huge shift from the old ways of doing business and creating social change. These organizations are realizing that tapping into collective states of consciousness can unlock potential and lead to breakthroughs that traditional methods just can't achieve.
And one of the key takeaways from Stealing Fire is that this isn't some fringe movement happening in the shadows. It's happening at the highest levels of society. CEOs, military leaders, scientists, artists, entrepreneurs, they're all incorporating these practices into their lives and work.
It makes you wonder, if these states have the potential to revolutionize so many aspects of our lives, how do we make sure they're used ethically and responsibly? Because, as we discussed earlier, there's a flip side to all of this. The same forces that can unlock creativity and connection can also be used for manipulation and control.
That's a crucial point. Stealing Fire doesn't shy away from the darker side of this landscape. It talks about how governments and corporations have experimented with ecstatic technologies, sometimes with questionable motives. It's a reminder that power, in any form, can be misused.
We have to be aware of these potential pitfalls as we navigate this new territory. We need to develop guidelines for ethical exploration and make sure these powerful tools are used for good, not for control or exploitation.
So how can we, as individuals, navigate this landscape safely and effectively? Stealing Fire talks about something called hedonic calendaring, which basically means mapping out our ecstatic experiences and planning for them in a balanced way. Can you elaborate on that?
Hedonic calendaring is about being mindful and intentional. It helps us avoid getting caught in a cycle of chasing highs and lows, and instead cultivate a more balanced relationship with these states, we need to remember that while ecstatic experiences can be powerful tools for growth, they need to be integrated into our lives in a healthy way.
One thing that really resonated with me in EntheoGuide was the emphasis on the importance of guidance and support when exploring non-ordinary states. It's not something to be taken lightly, and having experienced facilitators or mentors can make a huge difference in ensuring a safe and beneficial experience. What are your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. It's like climbing Mount Everest. You wouldn't attempt it without proper training and guidance. Similarly, we shouldn't jump into altered states without preparation and support. These experiences can be unfamiliar and challenging. Having experienced guides can help us navigate the potential risks and get the most out of the potential benefits.
We've covered so much ground. The neuroscience of ecstasy, the rise of the altered states economy, the potential benefits and risks. It's clear we're entering a new era of human experience.
And the big question that remains is, what role will these states play in shaping the future? Will we use their power to create a more conscious,
Connected.
and compassionate world? Or will we succumb to the potential for manipulation and control?
It's the question we all need to consider.
What's exciting is that we have more tools than ever before to explore and understand these states. We have access to a wealth of information, research, and technology. The challenge now is to use these tools wisely and ethically to create a future where ecstatic experiences contribute to individual and collective well-being.
I think that's a great point. Hopefully this deep dive is giving you some valuable insights to start exploring this landscape yourself. Knowing about these states and how they work can empower you to make better choices about how you want to live, work, and connect with the world around you.
As we head into the final part of our deep dive, I'd like you to consider this. What resonates most with you from our conversation so far? What questions are still on your mind?
You know, it's important to remember that these states aren't some magical cure-all.
Yeah, definitely. They won't just magically solve all our problems or turn us into superheroes.
Right, they're powerful tools, but still just tools.
Exactly. And like any tool, they can be used for good or bad.
For sure. We can't just chase these states without thinking about, the potential downsides.
Yeah, we need to approach them with respect, careful judgment,
Yeah.
and a healthy dose of skepticism.
Totally agree. One of the biggest risks is that we might try to use them to escape reality.
Oh, absolutely. It's tempting to get so lost in the bliss of these states that we lose touch with the difficult but ultimately meaningful parts of life.
Yeah, it's like anything that makes you feel good. Too much of it can backfire.
Exactly. We need to find a balance, a way to incorporate these experiences into our lives without letting them become a crutch or a distraction from our responsibilities.
So it's not just about the peak experiences, it's about what we do afterward. How do we take that sense of connection, creativity, and purpose back into the real world and use it to make a positive impact?
That's where the concept of integration comes in. It's not enough to just have these experiences.
Right.
We need to find ways to process them, to make sense of what they show us, and to apply those insights to our daily lives.
Okay, I see what you mean. An EntheoGuide really emphasizes connecting with nature as a way to integrate the experiences and insights from these states.
Yeah, that's a beautiful practice.
The author suggests spending time outdoors, observing plants and animals, or even just looking at pictures of nature.
Nature has a way of grounding us.
Right.
It reminds us that everything is connected and helps us find our place within the web of life.
For sure. It can be a powerful way to counter any disorientation or ego inflation that might come with these experiences.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, if you had one piece of advice for someone who's curious about exploring these states, what would it be?
That's a good question, I would say. Approach them with humility, respect, and a deep sense of curiosity. Don't expect quick fixes or easy answers. Be patient, be open, and be willing to learn from both the highs and the lows of the journey.
That's such great advice. And remember, you don't have to do this alone.
Right, there are tons of resources out there, books, articles, experience guides, and supportive communities.
Exactly. If this deep dive has sparked your interest, we encourage you to explore Stealing Fire and EntheoGuide further.
They're both filled with information, inspiration, and practical guidance for navigating this exciting and rapidly evolving landscape.
And don't forget to check out the show notes for links to additional resources, including some of the organizations and communities we talked about.
As we conclude our exploration, we leave you with this final thought. If these states have the potential to revolutionize so much of what we do and how we live, what role could they play in your life? How might you harness their power to unlock your own potential, deepen your connections, and make a positive impact on the world around you.
It's definitely a question worth thinking about.
It really is.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep expanding your horizons.